Now then, a collection of treasures taken from Ethiopia by the British 150 years ago is at the heart of a major artefacts transfer deal and attracting global attention. The valuables, including a gold crown and a royal wedding dress, are at the centre of a bitter international dispute. Now, Ethiopia formally demanded to have them returned back in 2007. That request was refused, but now London's Victoria and Albert Museum is offering a compromise, a long-term loan. Well, a selection of the items called the Magdala display went on show at the Victoria and Albert today. Now, the exhibition includes 20 pieces in total, which are all being showcased to mark the 150th anniversary of the battle that led to them being captured. There's just a glimpse of some of those treasures. Well, I'm joined now to discuss all this by Vicky Ngari-Wilson, founder of the Return the Magdala Treasures petition, and the historian and author Dominic Selwood. Very good to see you both. I'm going to start with you, Vicky, because you've just come from a preview of that exhibition. With your nose kind of pressed up against the cases, thinking they should be in Addis Ababa or somewhere.
I've actually been there before. I was thinking a private preview. Obviously, our exhibitions are known for, having a certain society attend, and I would have liked to see more of the Ethiopian community there, for sure.
But Dominic, does this seem like an elegant solution, perhaps, by the V&A to offer them to Ethiopia on loan? And the length of loan seems to be unspecified.
I think you have to start from the perspective that museums are magical places. They allow us to go in and experience all of human creativity and compare it all side by side. So if we didn't have these universal museums, and there are several great ones in the world, and London has some of them, would be a lot poorer in terms of how we understand the way cultures evolved and how they sit side by side. So I always start from the position that museums actually, they're a wonderful thing. Turning to look at individual artefacts is always more complicated, but it has to be within that bigger picture.
Can you come in, Vicky?
I'm
yes,
sorry,
and join.
Forgive me.
Join the debate. Yeah.
So, because I work in the creative industries, and the creative industries accounting for nearly 92 billion of the UK economy, and that's divided with approximate figures here, 37% being visual creatives like fashion, and then another 37 that feeds down to that like technology, and then another like 14% which is museums. Wouldn't it make more sense to actually correct this very uneven exchange relationship and focus on giving back the treasures to the rightful owners, where we don't really understand what that means to them over here? They belong there. And maybe using something like creativity, the V&A and fashion, to have our own version of treasures or inspiration.
What do you make of that then, Don? I mean, these treasures, and so many others, which we'll get onto in a moment, were in effect looted, taken out of the country by a then massive colonial power.
Cultural property is a very hot topic and has become so in the 20th century. We had the Hague Convention in 1954 when we said we're going to draw a line to looting and to taking things from other places on the battlefield. But it's quite difficult then to say, well, let's go back before that date and look at things that happened in the 15th, 14th, 12th, ancient Greece, and decide we're going to move things around the globe. The fact is, objects move, and they always have done.
Well, not on their own account. I mean, they are moved
Absolutely
by
not.
people.
They're bought, they're stolen, they're looted, they're exchanged. For all sorts of reasons, things end up a long way from home. And so deaccessioning, which is a big topic in museums, has to be looked at with a lot of very careful lenses. And one of them as well, apart from trying to impose our own values on what happened in the past, is identity is not always as simple as we think it is. In some cases, it's obvious where something should go back. But if something's created by an individual from a community, in a town, in a country, in a union, in a hemisphere, there are all sorts of different places that you can draw that line. So when museum boards of trustees sit around and think, well, who would be the owner of this today if they feel it's an object that should go back to an owner? Even that's not always a straightforward question.
All right.
And I'm not trying to be tricky by saying that, but that can be a genuine issue.
But Vicky, what do you make of that? A line, I suppose, has to be drawn somewhere because so much has moved in different areas of the world. I mean, I've been to museums in the United States, and there are huge country houses taken from the British countryside. Presumably it was paid for. This has gone in a different way, but you have to draw the line somewhere, perhaps.
What do you mean by draw the line?
Just in terms of time, isn't that what you're saying, Dominic?
Yes, in terms of time, in terms of geography.
A date to have the McDullough treasures back in their original homeland, where they were created, where they are meaningfully, embraced and celebrated, and bring life to the people. We have a great Ethiopian community here that is distraught from the response that I've got from the petition, and that is emotionally checking out a whole community that could be really useful for Britain, actually. If we look at, let's say, veganism, the whole Ethiopian palate is vegetarian, and back to fashion and beauty, vegan products and fashion and beauty products are set to be another 24 million in a couple of years.
Interesting new dimension. Just tell me how many signatories have you got for this petition then?
The last time I checked, I think it was just over 1,000.
Okay, well maybe many more after seeing this.
Well, I hope so.
But Dominic, I mean, the point being that Britain was the mighty colonial power before the cut-off line you come up with, and British museums, not just the British Museum, are stuffed full of artefacts and objects of tremendous value that were quite clearly taken against the will of the people that were dominated at that stage by the British. Should it not now be our duty to give at least some of that back?
This is a live issue for a lot of museums and a lot of countries. So you probably saw that President Macron in France said that everything we have from Africa is going to go back. And it's quite likely that that's easier to say than to do. My fear is that actually the real winners in this are going to be the lawyers, because they're going to be tied up for 20, 30 years with very complicated questions of how things were originally found and who they should go back to. So if we take the example of the Elgin marbles, for example,
let's stay with these treasures, because 150 years ago, well, presumably nobody owns them now apart from the V&A, and if they want to, they could hand them back. Lock, stock and barrel.
Well, to whom do you hand them back? To say the Ethiopian people, clearly that's a lovely gesture, but they're not actually where the objects came from in the first place. These are specific items, specific religious items from specific...
We're nearly out of time, but Vicky, you have to come back on that.
From Ethiopia.
Yeah, presumably, I've never been to Ethiopia, presumably there are museums in Ethiopia that could easily house and showcase these items.
And if there isn't museums in Ethiopia, then that actually shows the intention of Britain, the real intention, because if Britain really wanted to correct this relationship with Africa, you would facilitate the right means to keep the treasures in their rightful place.
Listen, I'm afraid we're out of time, but it's a debate which I know will continue. Vicky Ngari-Wilson, very good to see you, and Dominic Selwood, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Now time for a quick look at the weather for you.